Welcome to this science roundtable, and I will be cognizant of also saying good morning to some of our colleagues who are joining us from the other side of the world, and welcome to this roundtable as well. I'm looking forward to the next couple of engagements that we're going to have over the next few minutes. I call it few minutes because I know time is definitely going to fly by. This is an initiative hosted by the South African Young Academy of Science, and we just want to talk about the title on the screen there, Quo Vadis Science, Where Are You Going Science? And I have got an esteemed panel who will join me in dissecting this topic. I would like to also add that we are streaming live on our Facebook page. To those who are joining us there, you're welcome to also drop some comments for us, and we'll be able to read them. Let me first get into how all of this started before we engage with our panelists. A couple of weeks ago, in one of our science platforms WhatsApp groups, somebody posted a video. And from what I noticed from the video, it ignited a lot of talk and discussion. And the video was by one of our panelists tonight, Allan, who will share with us his views around some of the ideas, not necessarily from the video, but in science in general. And we then decided, well, why don't we bring Allan over, and why don't we invite two of our young scientists who are going to be joining us to equally dissect some of the ideas which were being shared in the video. And this has led us to have our first panelist, Sudesh, Professor Sudesh from the University of Cape Town. I won't go into the bios, but those who've seen the profiles going around, you would read the bio. Sudesh is very passionate about what he does, and we're looking forward to having him to share some of his ideas as well. And all the way in KwaZulu Natal with Professor Tricia Naicker, who will also be sharing her views and ideas. Particularly, I'm interested in hearing Tricia's views on ethics in the science community. And then our special guest, all the way from the United States of America, and being resident as well in Zimbabwe, is Allan Savory, who is with the Savory Institute in the United States of America, and also the Africa Center for Holistic Management. So my job is easy, is to create a platform through which you, our panelists, can engage, but also through those who are attending can also talk to us and give us feedback. And I'm looking forward to that engagement later on when we open it up. So we're going to kickstart the roundtable, and I'm going to give 5 to 8 minute reflections to each of our speakers, starting with you, Sudesh. And you're going to launch us off, Sudesh, and the angle of your focus in this launching off is access to science, scientific information, and science communication. Looking forward to hearing your engagement, and I give over to you, Sudesh.
Thank you very much, Willie, and it's my pleasure to be on this panel alongside with Prof Naicker and Dr. Savory. It's just one of the topics that has been like triggering a whole lot of conversations within me. And when we saw the video that was circulated on our WhatsApp group from Allan, it kind of had a snowballing effect, and all of us came together. So my talk or my particular focus today is going to be on access to scientific information. So I would like to, kind of take this in context to what is happening with science in the current day scenario. So especially where in a world where we have access to scientific information, access to scientific information is hugely impacted by paywalls, and where fake science or the information that is not verified is freely accessible. So just we are just a YouTube click away from having experts speaking about anything and everything on including designing rocket science to all the way to designing drugs for COVID-19. That's the wide variety of information that we get, but we aren't sure whether these are authenticated information, whether these are verified information that we could really trust about. And the other layer of complication that we see in this whole fake science and fake news kind of world is that we as the scientific community, the academia, which is responsible for or which should take onus on bringing clarity on this lack of access to scientific information, have not done enough. In my opinion, we haven't done enough to break that barrier. So this leads to people actually looking up for information, but not having the actual access for the information that they are looking for. So this is a question that we as academics should, our researchers should actually start to ponder upon, because our scientific research is funded by the taxpayers' money, but so everything that we produce should be accessible by the taxpayers themselves. But there is a barrier in this, because we don't allow scientific information to go from the scientists to the public directly. There is a third party involved in it, which is our publisher, which kind of takes a different route into how we manage our scientific content. So we are publicly funding research, but privately distributing the scientific content. So which is quite a contrast of the business model that we are looking at, how we are distributing scientific knowledge. And that needs to be relooked into if we really want to affect, or if we really want to create an impact on the people whom we are doing our research for. So just again, I'm going to take a step back and going to look into how lucrative the scientific publication industry is. So this is a no-brainer, but just for the audience who may look up for numbers, there are more than 100,000 people employed in the scientific publication industry, which deals with over 8 million of academics actually publishing papers across 10,000 publishers. And the annual market for the scientific publication is more than $26 billion. And this is where I think our scientific information gets managed through a different third-party entity, which actually derails how the science should be communicated. So this brings in a whole elephant in the room that most of us are afraid to talk about, because we want scientific information to be accessed by the public, but then we have our academic chosen platforms which are governed by big corporates, and we as academics do not wish to go beyond these corporates in the publication. So that I think is one of the bigger problems that we face as academics. And I think we, especially this coming from the South African Young Academy of Science, we should look into ways of making scientific access to publication, scientific access to research. So whether open source or open access is the way to go for it, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe that's one step towards actually making scientific communications reaching to the target public. But maybe it's also about disseminating the information in a way that is understandable by the public. So we need to actually, as scientists, we always talk to ourselves. We are inward speaking. We as scientists speak to ourselves. But when the information that we speak to ourselves gets translated by a third party which doesn't understand the context. So it is also time that we actually talk to the public. While we talk to our own peers in academia, we should also change our directions to talk to the public in a way that they will also understand. So we need to improve our science communication abilities. And that's a challenge that most of our future academics or future researchers would have. And it's a skill set that we need to grow upon. And taking on to the next point, which I think is quite it's a chicken and egg problem, because we are on an ivory tower speaking to the specialists, and we are inward focused as academics. But how it also kind of pains to see how far and away the academics and the scientific research community is away from the context of research that they are dealing with. So one of the important aspects that I think should be incorporated in academic research is contextualization of research. Just imagine what there are so many problems out there that can benefit from our scientific abilities, but we tend to ignore the problems that actually impact the day-to-day lives of people, and we focus on things that is speaking to the ivory tower. We need to actually contextualize our research and speak to the people who need them the most. So in order for us to do this, we need to actively engage with our community. And that is as another thing that I feel that the current science is lacking, or should actually increase. So with that, I would like to hold for now for comments on this, but I would like to engage on this further. Thank you, Willie, for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot, Sudesh. And really, I think you get us off on a very nice trajectory. I mean, I'm making notes here. You mentioned broadcasting of science is just a click away. The role that our research is publicly funded, but there's then the private aspect where people just get involved in the business of selling science. And then the fear to offend, and you spoke about ivory towers and the lack of engagement. And I'm thinking right where you are in Cape Town, Sudesh, in Langa, in Kaelicha, in Harare, where you are in Cape Town there, how much of the so great publications and research output from the great institutions that are in Cape Town, all of them, how much is being translated into assisting the ordinary people on the ground who, by the way, are our custodian as well as a group of scientists in reaching out to them and hearing them what they benefit from the science that we produce in terms of the output and also in terms of the accountability factor which you spoke about. Tricia, I think you're going to get into aspects related to ethics in the science community and a little bit about peer review. So I'll give over to you, Tricia.
Thanks, Willie. And due to the different time zones, I will just say good day to everyone. It's really a pleasure to be amongst my co-speakers, Sudesh and Allan. Yes, so today I'm going to just touch on ethics in the scientific research before I can hand over to Allan for his expert opinion and advice on these important topics. So, honesty and integrity. Qualities many of us will agree goes without saying. However, in the recent years, sadly, we're beginning to live in a society where we are slowly losing this value of honesty and integrity. And ethics affects us all, you know, it is the foundation to which we build our everyday relations and livelihood. I think we will all agree it constitutes the essence of a civilized society. But in the context of scientific research, there's obviously a close link between ethics and science for reliable, high quality outputs. Now, regardless of the type of scientific research, we as researchers should know it must be rigorously designed, organized, and planned, while still conforming to proper and true ethics. Now, this might be obvious to many of us here, but I would like to reiterate, what does that not conforming to ethics in science actually mean? You know, it's very easy to say, I got my ethics approval and my project or my work is fine. So I'm going to quote Prof. Stephanie Burton from University of Pretoria, where in one of her recent talks, she summed this up pretty well. So it includes the fraudulent reporting and manipulation of factual information, plagiarism, unauthorized use of confidential research results, unacceptable acquisition, allocation, or abuse of funds allocated for research purposes, and finally, the violation of copyright or any other form of intellectual property right. Now, we are all aware that academia has changed drastically over the last couple of years. The question is, how do us as scientists respond to these changes with respect to conducting our research in an ethical manner? The pressure to publish is intensifying worldwide because research activity is now equated with the quality and value in institution advancement. And we all know all universities have different incentives for us to publish. So instead of universities working together, we are now working against each other. And the harsh reality of publish or perish has made academic life incredibly stressful. So this has not only led to increased publishing science that is poor quality or misleading, it's also led to unethical practices and publication fraud, which is also showing a serious increasing trend. And we need urgent steps now to try to stop this phenomenon. The pressure to increase the number of publications has led to so many unethical practices and for lack of a better word, just wasteful research. And the last figure I read, and I was having trouble to find statistics in this, but the last, I think, most reliable one that I read was that 2 million articles are published each year, more than half of which go uncited. So the increasing scientific articles have fueled the demand also for new journals. And I'm sure many of you here know every other day we see a new journal or bogus conference popping up. We all get these invites. So the question arises, are we headed in the right direction? Which brings me to my next point of the breakdown in our peer review system. And being an editor myself, I will highlight not all, but just a few of the challenges that I know we experience in this area. So some, but not all, peer reviewers lack proper training on how to actually review a paper. And this obviously leads to bias and inconsistency in either the acceptance or rejection of the work. Peer reviewers may also just be overworked. We have such a small pool sometimes of peer reviews. And this can be dangerous because it could lead to publication of poor quality science, or it could actually hinder impactful research from being published. So there's no real incentive to this service, although I know more and more journals now are trying to work towards a more formal system of recognizing peer reviews. And finally, there are just too many papers. Some journals are putting a halt on submissions just to deal with the backlog, which comes down again to the growing number of research articles. Are they making an impact, or are they just being published for the sake of a number? So the pressure to publish and the pressure on our peer review system is so closely intertwined with conducting research in an ethical manner. And I really think we need to go back to the basics of honesty and integrity, realizing that ethical responsibilities lie within ourselves. Every researcher needs to set standards in which they consider to be true, reliable, and reproducible. And I'll give you an example of what this means. During my training, obviously my work is in the field of catalysis and multi-step organic synthesis. I was trained by my supervisors to always take an average of 3 attempts of the same reaction before we reported or published a result. And today with my students, I try to do the same and practice this. However, I'm aware of other reports that are published that just cannot be reproduced, or the result fluctuates so much no matter how many times we attempt the experiment. So we as researchers need to somehow promote this trait I know it takes discipline and I know it takes responsibility within ourselves, but we somehow need to promote this trait with our students, with the emerging researchers. And perhaps we need to even start at undergraduate level or even at school to somehow curb this misconduct in order to produce impactful and innovative research. And my hope is that by this change, it will inevitably re-strengthen our peer review process. Or else, again, I leave you with a question. If we don't do this, is our scientific research heading in the right direction? So I look forward to your comments and some advice from my co-speakers, and thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tricia. I really, really enjoyed that. I will tell you that just a few hours ago, I got a 3-in-1 from this one journal that just wrote to me. And this dovetails in what you were talking about. This journal was inviting me, number one, to publish a paper in their journal. Number two, be on the editorial committee as soon as yesterday. And number three, propose a special issue that I would edit for the journal. And this is exactly some of the things that we're talking about. And what your talk links up with Sudesh's part about the business of science and the pressure to publish, which is resulting in all of these unethical issues and questions around the honesty and integrity of some of our scholars and the science we produce. I also enjoyed your reflection on wasteful research. 2 million articles go uncited, yet they've gone through so-called peer review, and some of them have even gone through a payment mechanism where people are paying to publish this work, and that's sobering. And then finally, I loved the reflection on cooperation and competition versus collaboration, where people, out of the pressure to publish, are choosing to work alone and not collaborate because of this pressure that we are under. So thanks a lot for that, and I look forward to some of the comments and engagements from our attendees around your reflections. And then our next speaker is Allan Savory. Allan is probably the reason why we decided to have this roundtable. And Allan, if there's any witness to the power of influence, I think that video alone has literally caused us to be here today and to converge to discuss these issues. So I will give over to you, Allan, and welcome. You're a son of Africa, and we look forward to your engagement.
Thank you, Willie, and the others. Thank you for the honor of being here. I'm glad that little clip out of a very much longer, more profound documentary generated this. When we say Quo Vadis Science, I have no problem with science. And as I listen to Sudesh and I literally don't see a problem there. I see enormous problems with academia, and but I think science itself is not an issue. I wouldn't be alive without it. I've had so many injuries, diseases, etc. I run on batteries and spare parts. There's nothing wrong with science. A lot wrong with academia, but I don't want to go there because we've got years to solve that problem. All of us are aware that right now we're facing global desertification, mega fires, and climate change, and these are in a feedback loop accelerating, as nature's feedback loops do. And we really are facing not the beginning of big problems, not anything we can mitigate or adapt to. We're facing the beginning of the end for civilization as we know it. So we're in a desperately serious situation. And one of the things that's got us there is the issue we're talking about. But I'd like to take us beyond that to try to solve the problem if we can. Now, we've had years of denial that humans were causing climate change, but in recent years, we've had from all sane scientists an acknowledgement that humans are causing it. Now, that being the case, there's only one way to interpret that. That means it isn't God or someone up there or someone out there causing climate change, desertification, megafires, which are one issue, right? If it's us, then it means it's management. It means it's not being caused by coal and oil or livestock or greed or corporate greed or all the things we're talking about. So it is how we manage resources based on science, etc. All right, so we need to focus on that. Now, world leaders have to focus on it, but they are advised by scientists. And if you look at it, we've had 25 COP, Conference of Party, meetings of scientists from all manner of disciplines meet to essentially give guidance to world leaders. And if we look at those conferences, what did we see? We just saw nothing but chaos and confusion and no direction at all come out of it. Now, if we think of this problem we have, we should have put it on a war footing long ago. If we look at it in an analogy there, World War II, we didn't precede it with 25 conferences of scientists discussing how to deal with it. World leaders, political leaders, had to deal with it, dictators and democracies, and they did so through superb planning and using scientists in support of their management of the war effort. And we won World War II, the Allies did. It's not anecdotal, there's no peer-reviewed papers, there's nothing to prove it, except the fact that we won it, which we can document. Now, if we look at this management that is causing climate change, every one of us knows as an individual that just common sense, that if we don't address the cause of a problem, we have no hope at all of solving it. That is common sense. Now, if management is causing it, we manage so many thousands of things, we believe. What should we pay attention to? Fortunately, for reasons we can't go into here, I began studying this problem 65 years ago, when I became very alarmed at what I was seeing in future national parks that were deteriorating before we even made them national parks in the wildest parts of Africa. So, having studied it for many, many years, I've finally been able to understand we only manage three things. That's all humans manage. We manage humans, our families, communities, we manage institutions, we manage nature, we manage economies. You do not make, you do not produce these, you manage them. Every single thing other than that we humans do, we make or produce. Art, literature, cities, space exploration vehicles, energy from nature, food from nature. We produce masses of food from nature. Everything we make or produce is not complex, by definition. The three things we manage are complex. Self-organizing complexity. There's where our problem lies with that. Now, if we, and I'm very much just summarizing because I provided materials at your request, Willie, before this for folks to study. If we look at management, one of the people who studied that more than anybody I know is John Ralston Saul, and he wrote the best-selling book Voltaire's Bastards. And what he did was to study management from the time of Voltaire to the present. And what he concluded was, with the advent of increasing science, Western science, etc., things got worse, not better. And I quote him here from his book. He says, "The reality is that the division of knowledge into feudal fiefdoms of expertise has made general understanding and coordinated action not simply impossible, but despised and distrusted." There's the issue we're really facing. Now, we can come back in discussions to the excellent points made before. Sudesh, about the context for research, etc., ethics, etc. But really, I would like us to focus on how do we correct this problem of addressing the management of complexity, because institutions and humans are one of the things we manage, and what we are discussing, the peer-reviewed process, the lack of ethics in academia, etc., and I could go on forever on those subjects. What those are wicked problems of complex soft systems, human institutions, academia. So all we're doing is discussing a wicked problem known in social science, in system science, as a wicked problem. So anyway, I did provide materials. I've given a very, very quick summary because I don't want us to listen to me. I'd love us to just have a discussion about this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Allan. And the disclaimer right at the start for me, the problem is not science. The problem is the academy, and I agree with you, and I agree with you as an actor and a stakeholder, if you like, within the academy. And then the other issue which was interesting to me is that we need, as scientists, to provide guidance to world leaders. And I like that because I think that's the policy imperative that all science should have. It's not about publishing in Nature or in your top tier journal, but it's about what implication is that having in guiding world leaders. And I hope, Allan, it won't take us another 5 years for people to start listening. And the three things that we manage, interesting thought there. And then how do we correct the problem? And then the quote to Voltaire's bastards, quite interesting, the wicked problems. And so we've given our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, time to reflect on different aspects of the topic. I've got some comments and ideas I would like to pick from them, but I would open it up as well. And Kolani, I'm going to rely on you. And Allan did say this is the wonderful part where we get people to engage and to talk. There is a platform that's running currently on our Facebook page. So the South African Young Academy of Science, you can also drop a comment if you're on the Facebook page. Just drop a comment. We'll be able to convey it, or question to convey it to the panelists here. And in the chat box on the Zoom platform, please also, Kolani will help me monitor that. And let's fire away. Are there any comments, Kolani, that we've got that we could start off this discussion with?
Yes. So Gert Kruger has written to Tricia to say that her point is very valid. Although basic research should be encouraged, more applied research is severely lacking. We are trying hard, but as you know, it is not easy. And he proceeds to say that, Allan, is that that's something else? Is that an impala behind you? That's something else. And then he proceeds to say, Jordan Peterson said he chose not to get involved in politics since even managing a city was too complex for him. You propose a management solution that makes management system less complex.
Okay, so let's start with Tricia, the reflection on the balance between basic and applied research. Can the two go together, and how do we make them go together? And obviously, we're not pushing for a superiority of one over the other, but just your reflection on that comment from, I think it's Gert Kruger.
Yes, Willie. It's Professor Gert Kruger is a mentor and collaborator of mine. Yeah, I agree. There should be a balance between basic and applied research, but in this time, it's very tough because we want to do basic research and become experts in a certain field so that we can then go to more applied ways and become innovative and let that lead to innovation. But not all times are we being funded for basic research. So, that becomes tough on an academic. But yeah, I agree. It's not easy, and I can't say that. I know in this era where everyone is trying to move towards applied research, where can you innovate and stuff like that, and yes, funding. But I think if we push that agenda too much, then again it comes down to ethics, because how valid are those research results? So I believe that if we start to fund and invest in the foundation and basic research, we can do it right and we can do it correct, and then we can build on that to become more applied.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. Kolani just helped me with the comment on, there's a quote there which was cited. Was that a question to Allan, or was it just to support Allan's commentary?
It's a question. It's a question to
It's
Allan.
a question. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a question to Allan, and also Herr Kruger has raised his hand. I'm not sure if he would like to ask that question.
Let's give him the platform. Prof, good evening, and you're live. You can go ahead.
Thanks, man. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. No, my first question was to Allan. Is that an impala hide there behind you, man?
Is that a what?
Impala hide behind you.
No, it's a springbok, I think. No, it is an impala, yeah.
Okay. I just thought I feel at home there, man.
Yeah, and the tusks here and horns here and all sorts of African stuff.
Yeah. No, my question to you, maybe I must just rephrase that or just ask it again. I've seen a YouTube clip from Jordan Peterson where he said he didn't get involved in politics because merely or simply trying to manage a city is too complex for him. He can't understand enough. So your proposal on holistic management approach, will that necessarily make managing things less complex for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you elaborate?
We'll talk about that later, or I could tie it in, Willie, with this. Tricia, you said, we need more research, applied research, etc. What we actually do need is management and research in support of it, and there is a way of getting that done. I'm trying to be brief here. There is a potential solution. We began developing it in Zimbabwe. We didn't know, and that was watched closely by South Africa, and we didn't know about wicked problems in institutions, etc. So it resulted in a lot of issues. I went into politics to try to solve the problem, into the military aspects of it, etc. I got exiled, went to America, continued the work, and far-sighted people in America engaged me to put 2,000 scientists and managers from World Bank, all the main agricultural university faculty members attended, the main government agencies of the USDA, Forest Service, etc. And by 1963, we were putting 2,000 people through training over a 2-year period. All of those helped me to keep developing the management concepts I was working on. And by 63, we had what I call broken through. And groups there in training, and it's published in my textbook, were able to say, we now recognize that unsound resource management is universal in the United States. And frankly, it's the same in every country in the world. So we knew that by 1963. None of us, including those far-sighted people in the USDA, knew about wicked problems in institutions. And instead of us developing that rapidly like we did once we got the Wright brothers flight and we were on the moon within 70 years. Instead of developing that rapidly, what happened was a ban, and powerful universities banned all future training of government and World Bank people, and we stopped it. And in South Africa, I was banned from setting foot on any university campus, any university in South Africa for over 20 years. So these are wicked problems, and I don't think we should go into them now, but what does matter is that, yes, in 1963 we discovered what was causing it, which is reductionist management, and mostly at the government policy level where we manage at large scale, and we discovered how easy it is for governments to get and politicians to get scientists in support of the management, because there's nothing wrong with the science. Get them in support of it and get the management to be holistic, managing the complexity of institutions, nature, and economy indivisibly. You cannot manage the hydrogen in water. It ceased to be hydrogen the moment it became water. Land is not manageable. Nature is not manageable. Economies are not manageable. Society is not manageable. They can only be managed together. And it's unbelievably easier than reductionist management of today, which is leading to one tsunami after another hitting us, as we know. So we'll probably come to that later in the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Gert, for coming in there. Kolani, let's maybe take anyone with their hand up. Yes, I see two hands. So Kolani, please help me facilitate that part. Who will go first? I can't see them, so you can help me there.
Okay, we do have Naomi Nkila. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Kolani. So I have a question for Tricia, because we're talking about dishonest practices, unethical research practices. So my question is, aren't universities also part of the problem? That's besides the issue of the pressure to publish. So yes, universities put pressure on us to publish, but don't universities also protect dishonest researchers? Because I know cases where people have been reported to their research offices for this real serious dishonest practice, like stealing a student's work and putting your name and publishing it as if it's yours. But because of who they know, because they've got these connections with people high up there, the deans, the VCs, and the whatever, and these cases get swept under the carpet and nothing happens, and these people get promotions, in fact. So aren't universities also condoning or protecting people who engage in these unethical practices? So how do we deal with that as academia? Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. Tricia?
Thanks, Naomi. I fully agree with you, and I know of examples myself. And yes, I agree. The problem is definitely and the higher powers at the university, and there's definitely a serious lack of compliance monitoring somehow in our system for these types of ethics. I don't know how we will solve this problem, but if Allan says the solution is, Allan makes it seem as if it's so simple. And if it's that simple and it starts with management, I don't know how we will start to get them to listen. The other thing is, you report this thing and then someone says, bring proof. How do you find proof sometimes? I mean, it may not be my field. I can't go and say this experiment is not reproducible. It might not be a student that I know and therefore they don't trust me. The other thing is students don't want to come forward because they feel like that's their supervisor. Their supervisor is their reference for life. They don't want to mess up that relationship. So there's various reasons on why this misconduct is getting swept under the carpet. So yes, I fully agree with you. The problem is at the higher powers at the university, and we somehow need to figure out a way on how this monitoring takes place. Allan, I don't know if you have something to add on that point. Sudesh?
Yeah, I would like Sudesh to come.
Thanks.
I would like Sudesh to come in because I saw him chuckling there. So I'm dying to hear what you think, Sudesh.
Yes. Sorry, Alan, I'm jumping ahead of you. So, Willie, Tricia, you're making a very important point. Again, this is a glass house that we are sitting in. That's the academia. So, academia is kind of very protective about its own reputation and its how people see it. And I think just a decade ago, or even a little before that, things have been extremely inward focused. Like if there is an issue, then each of the institution has its own protocol process of how to handle scientific dishonesty at different levels. I know there have been incidences that I'm aware of that has happened across various levels, and the way in which they handle it and the process that it entails to complete the whole mitigation process, where the institutions try to protect their interests. It kind of makes it extremely bureaucratic and quite a long process. So the complainant, they essentially loses interest on it and eventually gives up on this. So if you look at the modern world, I think we can't hide behind these things that for that long, because it's just a tweet away before it can get to public knowledge. It's just if the science is not reproducible, then it's there are so many positions there, like the retract watches. Like you could just alert these kind of non-governmental, non-institutional setups which could actually raise these concerns. So I think it's also as future academics, future researchers, the onus lies on us to educate the future postgraduate students and the researchers about how what the implication that it could have beyond just using us as references. If something is wrong, you're also giving an open platform to talk about it, and we as researchers actually not hiding behind our clothes, but rather be ready to face if we are going in the wrong direction. I think with greatness, with leadership, it also comes with responsibility and liability that we should own up and stand up to this. So my point is, like, if we can actually create a system, or if we can engage the whole value chain of who all gets benefited by this whole inward-looking process, and try to incorporate setups like the social media, for instance, where ombudsman, not necessarily ombudsman, at least just putting out information out there in social media where everything can go out there quite quick. So there is a lot of ways that we could actually be that catalyst for change, and we ourselves practice it so that it gathers momentum before it reaches the institutional change. I think the younger academies should come forward to acknowledging ways of bringing such practices to light. And we are in that kind of a critical crossroad, Tricia and Willie. And I think we can actually try to set out examples if we come across anything of that sort. So I do feel that we need to break the traditional routes and also try to look out for alternate routes. Thank you, Willie.
Thanks a lot. Alan, would you like to have a go at that one?
Yeah, I think just as I listen to Sudesh, there are a couple of points that strike me. First is no one is to blame. Almost everybody is doing their best. Most people are good, etc. But things are going drastically wrong because we manage at large scale through institutions. Individuals can choose to change the light bulbs, ride a bicycle to work, but at large scale, you only manage through institutions, universities, environmental organizations, governments, etc. Now, institutions, and it took me 60 years to learn this the hard way, you can put the most perfect people in the world in them. But the moment you form an organization, it no longer behaves like a human being. It takes on a life of its own. And there are three wicked problems. So system scientists call them wicked, not being amoral, being because they're almost impossible to solve. Now, the desertification problem that I spoke to in the TED talk that went to 7 million people and made sense, all right, that took us, what, over 50,000 years to solve that problem. And then it was rejected by institutions. Now, that's one wicked problem. We do not know how, when somebody comes up with, as we do with holistic management, two discoveries, not in science, but in management, that go against thousands of years of human belief. Those sort of things never get accepted in the life of that person. They take 200 to 300 years to get accepted by institutions. Royal Navy took 200 years just with lime juice. Okay, now, we can't overcome that one. We don't know an answer to that. But there are two other wicked problems that are endangering the world now, and all institutions. You cannot avoid this. Now, one is that we and everybody listening is capable of common sense. Institutions are not. And that is serious. An example, if you asked anybody in this country, does it make sense for America to produce oil and coal, to produce corn, to produce fuel for vehicles? Everybody would say that's stupid in a hungry world, etc. Thousands of wonderful people are doing it because they all work for institutions. Universities, corporations, government, etc. It's a lack of common sense which our institutions are almost capable of doing. Now, the other is, the moment an institution does something wrong or feels criticized, it is extremely rare for an institution to say, as I did in the TED talk, I'm sorry, I made a big blunder. We killed 40,000 elephants because of my research. I was wrong. An institution has never admitted that yet. And they won't. And so if you take a wonderful institution, the Catholic Church, full of millions of people, beautiful people, wonderful people, truly, all right? How long have they known about pedophile priests? Hundreds of years. But they protected the priests, protected the church, circled the wagons. And they're wonderful people. They're just being humans in an institution. And I could go on and on. So these last two problems, I do believe we're going to be able to solve with managing holistically. It'd be a bit long to explain here. I think they're now capable of solution. The first one, I don't think will probably ever be capable of solution. So I am suggesting worldwide a way we might cut around it, because the desperation of the position we face today with global desertification, climate change, and feedback loop. So we are facing three wicked problems, and we're talking about the symptoms of them today.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Allan. Kolani, there was another hand after Naomi. I don't know who it was.
So Gert has asked his question. So we do have two extra questions, which I can read it out to the speakers. Okay. One, it's from Edith Shikumo. She says, the publish or perish drive in is majorly driven by the kind of one-sided metrics that is used to assess academics. If there is a push and focus on impact and showing science for socio-economic benefit and have both knowledge and societal benefit metrics, our approach may change. No, as a question. And then the last question is directed to Allan. Can you, in short, explain how would your management approach have handled the COVID-19 pandemic? If possible, that will assist us to understand his approach better.
Okay, thanks for that. Sudesh, Tricia, and myself, maybe. The first question is around perhaps maybe we are one-sided in how we are assessed by the academy, and we need to rethink how we assess the impact of what it means to be a good or great academic.
Willie, if I may, I think Edith's question is kind of ringing so much of resonance with me, because I kind of talk about this in my class and in my to my postgraduate researchers. So I think we as academics or academia, there is so much of disconnect from how we measure impact of research to what's actually happening on the ground. So, of course, we can go with the traditional rules of measuring quality of research in terms of using the impact factors or H indices of researchers. But I think there is more to it, to research. We should, it has its own merit. So I'm not saying that's there's anything wrong in that, or there are some limitations in that, and I think all of us would agree to it. But we are in a way practicing or pushing towards a consortium-based research, which may not necessarily, in most cases, actually allow coming of innovative ideas or innovative approaches to individual problems. And that is something that Allan in his video has actually mentioned. If you come out with a completely groundbreaking approach or for a particular research solution, who are your peers? Would they? We wouldn't have peers who would acknowledge and appreciate that groundbreaking information. So how does it get peer reviewed? So it can potentially get rejected. But on the other side of the story is, how are we measuring innovation? I think that's a question that we need to answer or ask our the scientific community. Is there a proper metric to measure innovation? Because in my opinion, to my limited understanding of how the innovation space works, there is very limited or no measurement index for measuring innovation. And so going beyond that, okay, patents, all those are all measures of an application, but not necessarily a measure of innovation. But how do you measure impact of these innovations? Because one solution, coming from a medical devices space, myself, I can talk about one solution that can actually have an impact on hundreds of thousands of people. But how do you measure that against a citation? Is that what we expect out of academic research? More citations or more impact on people? This is a question that we as responsible academics who are paid by the taxpayers' money, we need to answer this to our taxpayers. Are we going to be feeding into to the system that is going to be further building on the existing infrastructure, or are we going to focus our research on translating and impacting people's real lives? So I have a different opinion on that. So I do feel like we do not have metrics to measure impact and impact of innovation and impact of how translatable science is measured. So thank you, Willie.
Thanks for that. And I just want to offer my reflection. I'm more from the social sciences, and a couple of weeks ago, I got approached by the Conversation to write a piece for them. And then in my process of writing it, and then it went out based on some of the research I had done. In the last month, I found myself interacting more with ordinary people, if you like, who have engaged with that article more than the published research, who are finding it easier when I talk more about real life issues with them based on the research than using words like epistemology and ontology, which could somewhat be limiting and in terms of their engagement with us. Tricia, your bite on this question, and then I will then put, and apologies for this, Prof Himmler on the spotlight after Tricia, just to also get your perspective to some of the issues we've been raising so far.
Thanks, Willie. I support Sudesh in saying that there's no real measure for innovation, you know, because I agree citations don't equate to socio-economic benefit in many cases. You know, I know I do method development in organic synthesis, and I can have a paper cited hundreds of times, but how does that actually translate to benefiting social economic factors around me in South Africa? It's hard to tell. So yeah, we definitely need a measure for innovation. I agree, and I do agree with Edith that she's trying to say if we go for quality versus quantity, we will sort of have the shift. But again, we need to somehow measure what is impact. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. Colleagues, we are happy to be joined by our parent organization through the office of Prof Himmler, who is always happy to assist us as young scientists, and I'm so happy to see she's with us. And sorry for putting you on the spot, Prof, but we would love your views on some of the issues raised so far. And then Allan, get ready. Somebody wants to know, what would you have done in addressing the pandemic challenge that we're having right now? Prof Himmler, over to you.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and thank you to all the panelists. I've been listening to this conversation with a lot of attention, and I must say that you have raised many interesting points, which are very much the order of the day as we conceive what the future of science is and how we are all involved in this system of academia. I want to preface my thoughts by reflecting on a conference I attended last week on the impact of science. And I think several points made by the various panelists point to the idea of how we measure impact and who are the players and who do we do the research for. As our colleague from Cape Town has been saying quite repeatedly, that we are privileged to be able to do research with funds that primarily come from taxpayers' money, and that we owe them a lot in terms of what our research means to their daily lives. So looking at the bigger and broader question of impact, what difference does it make to the man in the street is a huge mountain for us to climb. Firstly, very rarely do we actually engage with the public upstream to our engagement in research. So having that voice of the citizens in terms of conceiving and constructing our research is rarely ever there. Then when we do the work, of course, we are obliged to comply with what the system requires of us. And as Allan has been saying, science is a marvelous thing, but it is that system, the bandwidth in which we operate that needs to have some attention and a redress of priorities and operational activities. I fully agree with that. And how we actually, when we do have outcomes of our research, put it all together for dissemination in the public at large is another shortcoming that we all have as researchers. I served as a researcher myself, working at the bench in the field of human genetics for over 3 decades. And towards the end of it, I realized what the value of that engagement with the public was around one's research. Fortunately for me, I was working in a field that was pretty much related to ancestry and understanding one's past, which is very topical in the public domain. And as such, people came to me asking for my input and genetic ancestry testing to learn more about their past. Classically, even groups in the country who were not receptive to engaging in this form of research would then approach me to be part and parcel of research. So that process of gaining the trust of the communities among whom you work with, and also listening and learning and constantly reshaping your ideology of how you engage at that interface is really, really important. Now, coming to the question of impact and how that plays in the broader sphere of dealing with issues in the national grid, we have several documentation that serves as a guide from the policymaker side. How often do we as researchers engage with these documents so that we can, direct the value of what we do to policymakers? Because everybody sets themselves different criteria and different hurdles to overcome. So this is the bridge that we need to connect with, the bridge of our own work with the various stakeholders, and that could involve a multitude of people, could be policymakers, publishers, fellow researchers, collaborators, etc. Then the other image I would like to put in the minds of people is, how do we take all of this to funnel or to distill this information so that what comes out the narrow end of the funnel is actually the soundbite that targets the communities or the stakeholders that we want to impress with our research. These are all very, very interesting issues that have embodied in them many, many serious issues that we have to consider. And as I am listening to you, and I'm sure my colleague Dr. Stanley Maposa is also listening, we are busy trying to put together a strategy looking at the transformation of the academy. So in this instance, the transformation also engages how we deal with the issues of excellence. What's our definition? How we deal with impact, how do we define it, and what it is that we want to do. So this is all work in progress, and I'm so pleased to listen to the insights of our bright young scholars. And while I do not have all the answers, I believe that if we work together, we can try to bring the differences of opinions in alignment, and at the same time contribute as a collective in addressing these problems. Thanks, Willie, for the opportunity to give me a voice. I know I gave you more than a soundbite, but these are the thoughts that were resonating in my mind as I listened, and I thought I should share it with you all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Prof. Your soundbite and your presence means a lot to all of us here tonight. Allan, here's a difficult one, and COVID. What would you have done if you were a policymaker in response to the challenges that that is affecting us all, particularly on the African continent concerning the pandemic? And then we'll dovetail into our end reflections before we end the debate. Over to you, Allan.
It's as I said earlier, when you start managing and developing policy, it's actually easier. So you say it's a difficult one. It's an impossible one with present reductionist management. So even when we, with our vaccines and so on, eventually get on top of this, there'll be the next pandemic and then the next and the next. They'll be coming in ever-increasing waves because they're one of the symptoms of what happens when you get massive environmental degradation and biodiversity loss and disease outbreaks, etc. Right, so at the present moment, governments are doing what they can and battling, as you know, to get people vaccinated, etc. But all policy on this is developed like all government policies are. There's only one way government policies are developed, whether they're dictatorships or democracies, and that's on expert advice. And we take the complexity of society, institutions, nature, and economy, the three things we manage, and we reduce it to the problem, COVID, or we reduce it to meeting a need or a desire, those three things, no matter how many integrated scientists, teams we have, whatever. All right, so we wouldn't do that if we were dealing with it holistically, if governments were. We would be dealing with it through establishing a national and global holistic context, a new concept, not in any branch of science, philosophy, or religion. It's described in the textbook, right? We would do it through that. Now, the moment we do that, and now use our scientists in support of the politicians managing, one of the first things you'd see emerging is how good the science is. We're talking about a management problem of nature, which the COVID scientists are not dealing with. But their science is damn good. And we'd be stepping up and doing the vaccines and all the wonderful work that's going on. That would be enhanced and so on. Now, at the same time, there are people who are seeing the future and the loss of biodiversity and the increasing conflict with humans, wildlife, etc. They're seeing this. And so massive prizes are being awarded. So Prince William has recently announced them, Sir David Attenborough and so on, for solutions. Okay? Now, you cannot solve that with technology and fire. There are only two tools scientists have got. They don't have thousands of tools as they believe. This is a management insight. And the only other concept we have is conservation. And that causes biodiversity loss in 2/3 of the world, roughly, of the world's land. So now we would be looking at management of it. Let me just give an example of that. Our scientists are very aware that if we lose biodiversity and simplify communities, you get disease outbreaks. We're very aware of that. All right? So here are all these prizes to restore biodiversity in Africa, where major parts of the problems will emerge, etc. All right, my home in Zimbabwe, the Africa Center for Holistic Management, is surrounded by more than 30 national parks. We've got 4 countries meeting there with national parks. If I take you into those today, you will see that they are our worst examples of habitat destruction, biodiversity loss, contribution to desertification, climate change, and future pandemics under the policies of South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia. Nobody's been bad. We just didn't know this until we discovered how to manage holistically. So all we need to do is go back to where we were in 1983 when we discovered that, and now let's start practicing it. You'll find COVID, we've got a hope now of not only handling it, but preventing some of the tsunamis that are going to hit us in the future. And you can't, when you look at national parks, you can't blame greed, you can't blame oil, you can't blame coal, fossil fuels, you can't blame corporate malfunction, you can't blame corruption. They're under management of 100% of highly trained professional scientists. There's no other thing to blame except the management.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, Chair. Thanks for that, Alan. So my panelists, I'm now giving you 2 minutes each to Sudesh. The way you're laughing, you know 2 minutes is not enough. I can read your mind there. I'll give you 2 minutes to then reflect on what could we do. And while we're at it, I want to bring in two viewpoints. The first one is I'm going to put them on the spotlight again. Prof Roelina from the World Academy of Science is with us. Prof, we're honored to have you here. And I would like your 2-minute reflection on the round table so far. And then Kolani, maybe you can then read in the chat box Rola's comment as well. Rola, thanks for joining us. And then we'll go into the 2-minute reflections from our panelists. Prof. Raulina from Madagascar, please, we would love to hear from you. The floor is over to you. And sorry for putting you on the spotlight. I don't know if Prof is still there. Yes, Prof is there, maybe. Okay, there we go. Go ahead, Prof.
So, I would like to thank you to give me the opportunity to interview under this video conference. You know, the problem in the developing countries for developing countries about science is the science is not well understood by political man, and sometimes it is very hard for scientists to set up science. And personally, I experienced this situation in my country, in Madagascar. But fortunately, I have the help of the TWAS, the help of the African Academy of Sciences, and the International Atomic Agency. And now I can say that the institute that I set up from scratch, the Institut National des Sciences et Techniques Nucléaires, is all set up, and a lot of students have been formed up to the doctorate and also professor of university. That is my point of view. And if I would like to tell you, I think that the first thing to be developed in the developing countries, is on the theoretical point of view, on the theoretical physics, because I'm a physicist in physics, is to develop the theoretical physics before applied physics. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Prof, for that reflection. And Kolani, please just read, I think there was a comment from Rola.
Yes. So Rola is saying, thank you for the wonderful discussion. It's nice to hear from all of you, the panelists. The importance of science communication seems to be in the spotlight. How might we prepare the young scientists of the world on this domain? That's the question.
Okay, and perfect. That dovetails into what could we do. Now, panelists, 2 to 3 minutes, and then we land this plane, and we have the final comments, and then we end the roundtable. Let me start with you, Sudesh. What could we do, and also considering Rola's comment as well?
Fantastic. Thank you, Rola. Thank you, Willie. So, my closing comments would be about, are we, as researchers, considering our community or our public as a stakeholder in our own research? If we are, or if we aren't, what are we doing to engage with them to inform our research? That should be one of our key aspects that we need to look into. And that goes back to what Allan has been saying, the holistic approach, trying to look at the holistic picture of how we can solve not just problems in isolation, but problems with context, right? So that goes back to our contextualization problem as well. So if I want to give an example, I design medical devices, but if 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 only I could give access to clean water and clean air, clean drinking water and clean air, I think 90% of the medical problems could be solved just by giving clean water and clean air. So as we speak, more than 2 billion population consume water that is affected or contaminated with fecal matter. Like 1 in 4 people consume water that is water that is contaminated. I think we as scientists need to take the onus on ourselves to work in the community to understand what the problems that are really faced in our community, and actually try to see how we can use our body of science, the knowledge that we have built, the expertise that we have gained through intensive academic research, and how we can apply in return to the society. And that kind of also leads to engaging further with the community in terms of the comments from Rula. I think it's super critical that we speak not the scientific language, but the language that people understand, that the majority of people understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Sudesh. Tricia?
Thanks, Willie. I'm not going to take too much of time. I just want to add on to what Sudesh said. We have to build on our experiences and our expertise in order to solve these problems that face us every day. But having said that, I think it's very important for the young scientists to also remember, in order to get to that point, you have to ensure you get the basics correct. And we've highlighted many challenges here with things that are wrong in the way we do scientific research. And from Allan, we've got some insight on how these challenges can be overcome using proper scientific management and this tool of holistic management. And I'm so glad that we heard from Himla and the work that she and Stanley are doing, because trying to bridge this gap between policymakers or stakeholders and scientists is really, I think, what Allan is telling us is the way to start it. So I believe that we are on the road to recovery. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tricia. Allan, your reflection, and please tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing with holistic management as well.
Well, let me try in this summary. I like what the others said and loved what Sudesh said about clean air and water. Yes, the environment at the end of the day is what it's about. We are destroying the human environment, period. And every creature, including human, is totally dependent on environment. So that's why I say we're facing the beginning of the end with global desertification, etc. Now, what I'm talking about, we've got two options ahead of us. And this is not just a moment's thought, this is years of discussing it with serious scientists and so on. Now, the two options ahead of us is when you have two management discoveries, right, that go against thousands of years of human belief, we can simply follow history and the social research and continue to make progress gradually. Everett Rogers, who was on a think tank with me in Santa Fe, wrote the textbook, Diffusion of Innovations, and how that can take 200 years or more for a new innovation that goes against human beliefs. Anything that doesn't gets Nobel Prizes, all right? Because people argue about it for a short while. It doesn't go against human beliefs. It's a new discovery. These that we're talking about today go against thousands of years of human belief. Humans believed there were hundreds of ways of management. No, all humans manage exactly the same way. I don't know any of you personally, but I know how you make every single conscious decision in your life, because all humans do it the same. We only discovered that in 1983. Humans and scientists believe we've got thousands of tools to solve the problems of the world. No, we don't. We have thousands of aspects of technology, and we have fire, 2 tools, for the last 50,000, 100,000 years of human existence. The only other concept we have is resting land. 2 of the tools we have cause biodiversity loss and desertification. The other one, technology, cannot solve it. All right, so we can follow the research of Everett Rogers, Lord Eric Ashby, who looked at how truly new paradigm-shifting innovations get into society, and all that research shows us it will take another 100 to 200 years before institutional acceptance. I've been over 50 years on it already, and not a single institution has yet accepted it as an institution. Thousands of scientists within institutions have helped me, but they cannot change their institutions. So that's one option. We can continue as we are. We're making great progress. We're encouraged by it, but I will stake my life on it, backed on solid research, that will take another 100 to 200 years. I don't think our young people and young scientists are going to have that time. I think we have to look for another way. Now, the other way I've thought about a great deal, I've spoken it in several talks lately, and that is to take the seriousness of this and just take one example. Let's take around where the Africa Centre is, in Africa. All right, we've got 4 countries there, and it's very important to South Africa because Victoria Falls is one of the top tourist attractions. So we can say we've got 5 countries there. I mentioned earlier, we have 30 national parks around us in Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe, that are some of the most shocking examples imaginable of biodiversity loss, degradation of habitat for humans and wildlife. We've got agriculture in South Africa and these countries, like America, being the most destructive industry ever in the history of the world, producing more dead eroding soil, 20 times as much as food we need for every human alive today. So we've got these massive problems of our national parks and agriculture. And what I'm suggesting, I've already talked about with President Mnangagwa, and that is to say, why don't we get one government, the president, to just act as a statesman, continue policies as they are, take no political risk, and continue policies under expert advice in reductionist management. And then let us work with everybody, the population, the scientists on the side, and let us develop an agriculture land policy holistically, in a national holistic context. What every citizen wants: cleaner food, cleaner air, more prosperity, physical security, etc. Let us develop a policy in that context. We can facilitate it from our institution and see what comes out of it. I promise you, what comes out of it, people are likely to accept it, and it'll be a very different world. There's nothing wrong with the science. There's everything wrong with policy development. Now, if we do that, and all of our countries can observe it, support that idea, it'll be an example for all of us of what can be done if we pull together as team humanity and begin to solve what is a management problem, not a science problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Allan. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so Kolani, we want to end this roundtable. We're only left with 5 minutes or 4 minutes. Are there any final burning questions or comments that anybody has in the comments box or chat box before we close? And I'll ask the SciAS co-chair, Marie, to just give us some closing remarks, and after the comments or questions. Any comments or questions or reflections anybody would like to share as we end the roundtable?
So currently we don't have anything, unless otherwise someone from the attendees has a burning question, or they have comments or reflections from what they've heard today.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, Kolani. And yes, to give our vote of thanks, I'll ask my co-chair, Dr. Marie, to just give us a vote of thanks, and we end the roundtable.
All right. Thank you so much, Willie. I would like to appreciate all the panelists today. We had an insightful discussion. It was so awesome to understand that it is the management problem. At times when you're alone, you might not be really able to pick it or see where to go. But with this discussion, at least there's some light, and people are concurring that indeed, if we pull together and if it starts with us, at least we can see some light at the end. So I'd like to thank you so much for creating time to have this wonderful discussion. I also thank all the audience for attending. Thank you very much for making this happen, and we will continue to work together. We really appreciate your presence. I also thank the facilitator, Willie. It was wonderful. Kolani, thank you so much. And everybody else who was behind this organization or behind the planning for this event today. I appreciate everyone, and may we continue to be safe and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Marie. And thank you, Allan. Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Kolani. And thank you, Sudesh. You know, I had actually gone and got a new shirt and a tie, and my video did not work. So I just am livid right now, but I'm grateful for everybody's engagement. And Allan, you are now a friend of our academy, and thank you for always inspiring us through the videos. And we're glad that we could have you on this platform. Have yourselves a great evening and a great day wherever you are. And please stay safe, and look forward to engaging with you in other discussions going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you for arranging this. Thank you, you guys.
Cheers.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Willie. Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Kolani.
So much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.